Hi, I'm Suzanne Turner, and welcome to a podcast delving into the personal narratives within the clinical research industry. Through candid interviews, we'll learn about the personal journeys and motivations of individuals who have chosen this profession, what I like to call their why. This podcast is not just for industry insiders. It's for everyone curious about the human side of healthcare. Beyond the industry's negative reputation, we'll shed light on the dedicated professionals behind clinical trials. Join us as we uncover the heart and passion of those working tirelessly behind the scenes in clinical research. Welcome to Heart of the Trial. Hello, lovely listeners, and welcome to Heart of the Trial, where we dive into the human side of healthcare, highlighting the voices often left out of the spotlight. I'm your host, Suzanne Turner, and today we sit down with Amin Jagani, whose 25-year journey through the world of pharma and clinical research is both inspiring and eye-opening. He's been a pharmacist, a site founder, a professor, and now a biotech consultant, helping turn ideas into impact. We'll hear about the human stories that fuel his mission, the future of clinical trials, and the business-savvy strategies that get breakthrough therapies to market. I hope you enjoy, and until next time, stay curious and stay compassionate. Welcome to Heart of the Trial, Amin.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me, Suzanne.
Of course. Why don't we start by having you introduce yourself to our audience and tell us what it is that you do?
Yes, my name is Amin Jagani. I am within the biotech pharmaceutical industry. I've been in the industry for the past 25 years. And at the present time, I am a co-founder and management consultant for a biotech consultancy called Hygia Group. And we look after clinical trials for early stage biotech companies. And we also have another set of clients, which are venture capital firms that work with us to be able to value biotech early stage companies as well. And I can, expound on sort of more of my last 25 years, but that's what we currently do.
Yes. Yeah. Your history is quite impressive. You do a lot. So why don't you tell us, I do want to talk about those 25 years. So how did you start? How did you get into this industry in the first place?
Yeah, good question. So I'm going back to 1998. I was working as a pharmacist within the community pharmacy setting. I'm here in Toronto, in Canada. And, as a pharmacist, you get to be able to make a difference to patients, providing them optimum drug therapy. But you get to do it on a sort of a one-on-one basis, right? As patients come in, you counsel them. And I was always looking for that opportunity to get into the research side of things because I wanted to be able to kind of close a loop between bench to bedside or bench to the pharmacy shelf, experience. And, lucky for me, I got a call from a company called Procter & Gamble, back, 25 years ago, and they were looking for a CRA. And so I joined at that time. And I mean, if you can think back 25 years, it was a different time, right, for drug development. I mean, I was flying literally from Eastern Canada, Halifax, all the way to Vancouver in Western Canada. We were collecting paper, 3-part NCR. I mean, you as a TNF lead will know what that means.
Yes.
And literally, hugging them back into the office and having our data management folks issue queries and so on. And moving forward through over the past 25 years to the digital age where you no longer have those large filing cabinets, you have Medidata Rave and EDC and to now where we're getting to artificial intelligence. And so, I've been working for big pharma, small biotech, and large pharma as well. And now, obviously, management consultancy, which is my own firm.
Yeah. And so when you transferred to working for like Procter & Gamble, you said you were a CRA, which is a reminder to our listeners that they're the individuals who go to the sites and visit with the actual doctors and the clinical research coordinators and such. So what did you do something else for the sponsors and these companies, like other than being a CRA?
Yeah, so I started as a CRA, clinical research associate, and then moved on to becoming a project manager for a company called Eli Lilly. At Eli
Hmm.
Lilly, I was overseeing a team of CRAs that were out in the field, and I was
Right.
providing project oversight, right? And at that time, we were looking at therapeutic areas like I was looking at diabetes, diabetic neuropathy. We were looking at Zyprexa, olanzapine. So we're talking psychiatry, CNS, right? Central nervous
Hmm.
system. And so as a project manager, I worked there for 5 years. And then I
Hmm.
moved on to the CRO side, CRO meaning contract research organization, right?
Right.
And so I joined a company called Syneos. Syneos
Oh,
at that time took me on as a director. And so again, here I had a group of project managers that I was overseeing in CNS therapeutic area. And then, fast forward to more of senior executive roles and starting my own company as well. Along the way, I started a clinical site, High End Healthcare, and so that
wow.
site essentially was a clinical investigative site that provided healthcare delivery as well as innovative research. So we had like 5 physicians in total, and that included providing clinical trials in CNS, central nervous systems, and also in rheumatoid arthritis. So I had about 3 family physicians, I had a neurologist or cardiologist, right? Sold that business, so we had a liquidity event sometime around 2015, and then, went back into sort of the precision oncology, cancer genomics, gene therapy space, worked for a very large CRO as a director of clinical program management.
Wow.
And then to now where we've started, so myself and 2 other partners, got together and started a biotech consultancy firm just to kind of leverage my experience over the past 25 years helping biotech companies.
Yeah, I was gonna say you've covered every angle, it seems, of the industry, starting
Yeah,
as a pharmacist, being with the sponsor, being with the CRO, and then you started your own clinical site.
that's
That
right.
that's amazing. So, okay, so what do you think? So you've been doing this for 25 years. So how has clinical research and drug development changed since you've been working in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest changes was obviously the move from manual to the digital side of things, right?
Hmm.
Uh, I think the other thing was a very collaborative environment. From back in 1998, 2000
Hmm.
to now, I see oversee a team of cross-functional, very talented people, 26 different countries, large global phase 3 trials, where
Yeah.
everything is instantaneous, right? And you can even talk about the data that comes out of those trials. Whether you're talking about the TMF, whether you're talking about the data that comes in through the EDC. So again, big changes there. The way monitoring was done back in 1998 to
Hmm.
now, when we have risk-based quality monitoring, what we call statistical monitoring, that's changed, right? We are now looking at
Yeah.
monitoring, which has become very digital as well. The role of the
Yep.
CRA has changed. And what's in the horizon? Well, artificial intelligence, right? I mean, that's a huge,
Hmm.
huge headwinds that we are looking at right now, and we can leverage that. That's going to change the landscape, over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, because I see it very commonly now with monitoring a lot of remote visits. So the CRAs aren't going directly to the offices, that they're having
Yeah,
calls with them and discussions with them that way.
right,
Um, and then even I've even seen on one study where they're sent like nurses to the patient's house and stuff.
right,
So it's all becoming, yeah, very remote.
right,
And
right.
AI has been a huge, huge hot topic.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Actually, so one other thing that
yeah.
changed, or that what I called a black swan event, was COVID.
Oh,
When COVID
um,
happened, think about it. We used to do a lot of things, in the traditional sense, and then all of a sudden we are thrust into this decentralized clinical trial model, right?
yeah.
And so all of a sudden now, as you said, we had to go fetch nurses who can actually go to patients' homes rather than patient having to come to the investigative site. And so here it is, we are trying to coach sponsors between a traditional versus a fully decentralized versus a hybrid model of how to do
Right.
clinical trials, right? The impact on patients. I mean, think about the fact that there is a patient who has a rare disease. In the past, they had to make their way into a clinical trial site. Now, with decentralized clinical trials, you could literally get them on board via telemedicine, essentially democratizing clinical research, right? And
Yeah.
so it is so amazing to be able to have these diverse patient population. I mean, people throw out this term about diversity in clinical trials,
Yeah.
and that is huge, right? That has open
Huge.
access to patients, right? And
Mm-hmm.
remember, at the end of the day, clinical trials is about patients, right?
Mm-hmm.
This podcast is about the heart of the patient. And so if we can get more patients to be able to access clinical trials, so be it. And that's, I think technology is helping us with that.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And so since you've been doing this so long, I really want to know what your motivation, I like to call it your why. Like why do you keep doing this?
Yeah, fair question. I think besides the fact that, I get to be able to make a difference, not only one patient at a time, but when a drug gets launched, it, can impact millions of patients out there, right? If it's a successful launch. I think one thing that really crystallized for me is over the past about 5 years, there was a sponsor that came to us. They wanted to do clinical trials in pediatric glioblastoma, which is essentially brain cancer. And that therapeutic area, there was no what I call reference standard or standard of care. There was no traditional therapy. There was no treatment essentially.
Mhm.
So we were charged with looking over an entire portfolio of programs. It was basically an adaptive clinical trial design, a basket of clinical trials. That I was the director of clinical program management in oncology. So this sponsor basically brought a patient and their mom. I remember this patient, Brandon, and the mom, just to kind of give us a sense of what we are dealing with. Who is that patient at the end of the line?
Uh-huh.
This patient spoke about how it took 4 years for them to be able to get a diagnosis. The fact that they had a BRAF fusion, in their sort of spinal column that has caused this, brain cancer. And when this patient Brandon, I remember it was on live video, said that his life was literally like staring into a tunnel, and all he could see and hope was that there would be some light at the end of the tunnel, and
Oh.
potentially, hopefully, it's not an oncoming train, right? And so when I heard that, and then he kind of ended up the patient and their mom ended up the video saying, you guys are doing a great job. If you can do this trial, we are waiting. And he said something that really resonated with me. He said he remembered a movie, Castaway by Tom Hanks,
Yeah.
and he said in that movie, Tom Hanks mentioned that you got to keep breathing because tomorrow the sun will shine, and you don't know what the tide's going to bring, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of how he was getting along. And so for me, that was my modus operandi. I went to my team and I said, Brandon's waiting. I mean, we got to get this trial to the market, get the readouts, the data for the sponsor ASAP. And right, so now it was a matter of balancing quality, speed, and value, knowing that there's a patient at the end of the line. And so it
Yeah.
comes down to this whole idea of management versus leadership. Not only did
Mm-hmm.
I have to manage the day-to-day chaos, but to inspire the team
Mm-hmm.
to say, make sure you keep focus on Brandon, right?
Oh
Long
wow.
story short, within the middle of the trial, we had an interim analysis, and the trial showed almost like a 64% ORR, objective response rate, in the primary endpoint.
Wow.
Essentially, basically meaning that the trial was doing really, really well.
Yeah.
Fast forward, a year later, phase 3, the trial gets approved, with FDA. It was fast tracked
Yes.
for accelerated approval. And the company got acquired. The stock price jumped from like $6 to $26.
Yeah.
The new drug that's out on the market right now, Agenda, essentially is a game changing therapy. So for me to have
Wow.
been involved in that, I mean, that's what I wake up for every morning.
Yeah. That's an amazing story. It actually made me tear up. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like I hope everyone has an inspiration like that, because that is the reason why we do this, is for the patients, and for them to
Right,
put someone in front of you,
right,
and like you could give them a name. That's the thing. You weren't like, there's a bunch of patients waiting for this. Literally Brandon is
right,
waiting for this. Wow.
right. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So what do you think are some of the threats or challenges over the next 5 years with drug development? Because you even just talked about how their stock jumped, and
Yeah,
we've got
yeah.
IA coming in, and now things are remote.
Yeah, I think the next 5 to 10 years will be instrumental for the biotech industry. One of the biggest challenges that I see is this huge impending patent cliff. right? A lot of the companies are actually facing, expiration of their drug patents, and so
Mm.
what's going to happen is the pharma industry has to be able to replace the pipelines. You think about challenges like, for example, there is this whole idea of the geopolitical tensions that we are working on right now, which are impacting how trials are approved, the FDA regulations, right? We are talking about potential trade barriers, tariffs, so that affects your supply chain. And then artificial intelligence, people are worried about our CRAs and others going to lose their jobs, right? So there's so many headwinds that we are facing right
Mm-hmm.
now. I think one of the ways that to be able to kind of navigate through those headwinds is to be able to try and focus again back down to the patient. Listen, at the end of
Mm-hmm.
the day, there are patients out there, there is unmet medical need, and we, what's funny is people always used to look at us as those statisticians in white lab coats. I think
Yeah.
at the end of the day, what they don't realize is that everybody wants to try and make a difference.
Yes.
And even though pharma has had this really sort of negative opinion,
Mm.
when we realized what happened through COVID and how we were able to essentially, get a vaccine, what takes 10 years for a normal drug within 10
Mm-hmm.
months, I mean, that was huge, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so that, again, the same way possible, a lot of headwinds coming our way, and I think the way we're going to navigate them is to focus on the patient, right? And
Yeah.
that's going to help us.
Back to the patient. I love it. Throughout your time in the last 25 years, I was reading some notes on you, and you actually wrote a book too,
Yes,
right?
yes. So one of my interests has been in the area of investment finance and corporate finance, and so I took some advanced courses in investment finance at the Ivy School of Business, and then I wrote a book on how to invest in the biotech industry. It's called The Profit Pill. It's available on Amazon. And the whole idea was, how everybody has this, idea of you can just invest in biotech stocks and make a lot of money. It's not for the faint of heart. And my goal was to be able to bring some structure and rigor to that novice investor who wants to go ahead and on a back of a napkin found out that this country is trading at that and so on, is to be able to give them some pause and say, listen, consider this, and this before you go ahead and make that investment. Otherwise, you could literally lose your shirt, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the skill that we're also applying right now in our consultancy when we deal with venture capitalists, is to say, we can value your biotech company that you want to invest in. Let's say you want to put in a round of Series A, or initial seed financing. Let us work with you to figure out what is the potential for this company. What is the potential valuation, and should you be investing in there? So that's where the finance and the business part mix together, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
VCs at the end of the day, yes, they are very focused on making sure that you can bring new therapy to the market, but they need to make money, and they want to be able to exit within 5 years and be able to realize an ROI, right? And so that's where that skill comes in place as well.
Yeah. So you help um, companies determine their value so that they can get investors.
Correct. We can actually take their data and we can put a valuation on the company, whether it's an early stage biotech company, it's a little bit more
Yeah.
challenging versus an established company. Look at the
Mm-hmm.
historical cash flows, and then figure out what the value of the company should be and whether they should be making that investment. And also we help them make a decision on whether they should get out of an investment. So if a venture
Mm-hmm.
capital has a portfolio of companies, we can come in and assist them to say, maybe this is the time for you to be able to realize that liquidity event that you've been waiting for, right? And be able to
Yeah.
go through a merger or acquisition, or a spin-off.
And that was actually going to be my next question is, do you help because one thing that anyone in this industry knows is there's always a lot of mergers, lots of acquisitions,
Right.
so do you help companies determine the value for that as well?
Yes. Yes. So as I said, I've got myself and two other partners. One of my partners is a capital financing expert, and so we look at their portfolio, the pipeline of products, and be able to establish sort of what should be in their portfolio and what is the best path forward, the trajectory that'll get them the best ROI, right? The value inflection
Right.
point. And so we help them with that portfolio analysis as well.
So you do so much. Like you're obviously running a company. You've written a book in the past, and then I actually saw you're like a professor too. You do some
Yes.
professor work too. So like,
But,
how do you balance all this? Because you're doing so much, you're so passionate. How do you balance it all?
so I think as far as the teaching aspect of it, I said, one of the headwinds we are facing right now is this potential, crunch on the labor market, right, as
Yeah.
artificial intelligence comes on. And so the local university here, York University, approached me during the COVID times to say, we're looking for some professors to come on board. And so I helped them with their curriculum development, and now currently work as a lecturer, bringing new blood to the pharmaceutical industry, right? So any medical doctors and physicians who want to become investigators, these are my
Yeah.
students, right? I basically help them
Wow.
teach them sort of the whole drug development program, and then they get a postgraduate credential from York University.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah,
amazing
yeah.
because
So a lot of people
understanding would make their job easier, right?
right,
When someone comes with a clinical trial for their site and they understand the whole process.
right, right.
Wow.
We've had
That's really
physicians who
cool.
say, listen, oh, we want to get into clinical trials. We've been doing family medicine. How do we do it? Right. And so now
Mhm.
that York University has a program, literally, if you're a medical graduate, you can go in there and, I'll be one of the instructors there lecturing on them on sort of all the ins and outs of pharmaceutical product development.
Oh, that's amazing. What do you think has been like your favorite bit of everything you've done over the years? Because you've done such a variety of things. Is there one specific one that's your complete passion?
Yeah, I think the intersection between science and medicine,
Yeah.
uh, and sorry, not science and medicine, between science, medicine, and business, and
Yes.
trying to be able to, because a lot of the folks within and you've worked with a lot of people as well, they're very technical focused, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they know how a CRA goes out and does monitoring. They know how project management's done, how the operations aspect of it is done. But to be able to marry the two, business and science, and to be able to then help a biotech founder go from the stage where they have a product that they want to be able to realize commercial, potential, and be able to guide them through the whole journey, like handhold them literally, right? From the time when they
Yeah.
get their initial seed financing or the Series A, and be able to help them scale up. I think that motivates me and keeps me really excited. And being able
Mm-hmm.
to kind of use all my experience and knowledge to be able to say, here is the best trajectory for your product, and this is how we can get you to the market quicker and faster. Because at the end of the day, there is that quote unquote Brandon who's waiting, right?
Yeah. And as you're doing this every day, what do you think are some of the current hot topics in clinical research and drug development that keep coming up?
Yeah, so hot topics, some of them I've already mentioned, the decentralized clinical trials. We have artificial intelligence, which has impacted sort of all across the spectrum, right? So artificial intelligence not only impacts the way we do things, but it impacts patient recruitment. We have companies now, vendors that use artificial intelligence to be able to target, just like a GoPro GPS finder, how where the fish are. Essentially, literally going out there through spider technology, social media, and to be able to find that patient that will satisfy the protocol inclusion exclusion criteria for this rare disease, right? And so artificial intelligence is helping us get that right patient. I think another hot topic is 3D printing. A lot of the different companies are well involved in trying to use that technology to be able to manufacture products that could be either placebos or investigational products, right? And so 3D printing, I think in certain areas like dental implants is already, well
Oh,
functioning. Within the clinical trial space, that is something that I see coming through down the road. Messenger RNA technology. So if you remember the COVID vaccine, that was basically RNA technology platform, right? Where
right.
we
Right.
essentially used that RNA that was bound by a liposome that basically went into the patient's bloodstream and delivered the product. Well, the same kind of RNA technology is now being used for other therapeutic areas, such as oncology, such as
Hmm.
arthritis, Parkinson's, and so on. Areas like cell and gene therapy, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of different opportunities and hot topics out there right now. Now,
So
some of them obviously are also kind of being challenged. The cell and gene therapy, I think, is an area where unfortunately success has been hard to come by. So there's been a few VCs that have left that space for now.
So I'm looking it up because I want to make sure. Now, if I understand, RNA is when they take something within the individual's own body, they like do something to it, inject something in it, fix something, and then put it back into your body to like use your body to fight
Right.
whatever's going on, correct?
Yeah. So if you think about the COVID vaccine, the way it
Right.
happened was back when the tragedy happened, in Wuhan, right? The following couple of months later, February 2020, the Chinese released the sequence of the virus, right? That was on open source. So there was a race by all the pharma companies to basically take that sequence, right, the RNA sequence of the virus, and being able to produce that vaccine. All we had to do now is to basically encapsulate the protein into a lipid nanoparticle and then be able to deliver it. So Pfizer came out, BioNTech came out with a vaccine that required a minus 80 freezer. Other companies like Janssen came out. And so essentially what an RNA is basically your own, genetic material that
Hmm.
is now being used in therapeutic sense, right?
Right.
So being able to deliver it. So a lot of the anti-vaxxers out there, a lot of miscommunication out there, you're not changing anything. Essentially, what we are doing is being able to get your own cells to manufacture the treatment, right? And so
Yeah.
that's something that needs to be clarified.
Yeah, and I've seen that in like the oncology stuff and all going. That's becoming like really, really big.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you about actually lots of things. I took some notes down from what you were just talking about with these hot topics. Let's start with AI. Like, what are your concerns there? Because I feel like I know from a TMF perspective, we've had a lot of discussions within our group, about the fact that there may not be a lot of guidance in place. So you just need to ensure that your AI is meeting regulatory guidance that is there, even if it's not specific to AI. But
Right.
that's just in like one area. So what kinds of concerns do you have with AI and these trials and technology?
Right, right. So AI is something that's just been thrown out there, but there is different types of AI, right? So there is generative AI, which is like ChatGPT, right?
Mm-hmm.
Many of the companies use that to be able to assist their employees to get answers quickly. ChatGPT uses a very large, database of information that the model has been trained on. Then there is something called agentic AI, where we're now trying to go from just large, data out there to very specific targeted niche data and being able to do it in real time. There's a company called Anthropic that has come out with a model context protocol (MCP) that essentially allows the sort of that static generative AI to become agentic AI, right? So the whole idea being that you can now use AI for many, many different things. But the problem with AI is there's still this whole rate of hallucinations, right? And in fact, from what I've recently been able to discover going through AI conferences, this could be anywhere between 15 to 30%. So just think about it, right? 2/3 of the time you are correct. 1/3 of the time the AI is giving you some wrong information, right? So there has to be
Ooh,
some safeguards out there in terms of
yeah.
using AI, right? And besides the fact that, as you said, in TMF, in other cases like in generative AI, we need to make sure there are guardrails and that we are using the information correctly, and that we have to have a human in the loop, right? So we're not just
Yes.
completely relying on the machines, that we have somebody
Mm-hmm.
QCing it. I mean, in TMF, it's really important that you QC the
Yes.
work, right, of CRs that are filing documents, right? Same here. You can't
Yes.
let everything on a machine, right? The machine will
Yep.
do what it will do, but at the end of the day, there has to be a human in the loop. So that's some of the concerns that I have. I think we will overcome them as time goes on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the speed with which innovation is coming along in AI,
Yeah.
it's like literally, hockey stick kind of,
Yeah.
exponential growth.
It's been fast already seeing like vendors that are offering ways where the AI is just making things faster for them, being able to plug in fields and stuff to speed along the document filing and all. Like it's amazing how fast this is happening.
Right, right.
Um, so I want to go back to this 3D printing. So I want to understand some more how that's being used. So what are they doing with these 3D printings of things? Is it like I
So,
guess
for example, in the
yeah.
in the dental implant
Yeah.
case, you can essentially put in the specifications into the 3D printer, right? And it can literally print for you tissue samples. And so, just like if you go to your local, 3D printer, the local library, you can put in the specifications and you can actually have a 3D printed object. Now you can essentially do the same thing for whether it could be, you're given a drug sequence, or it could be a tissue sample, or it could be, some other modality, right? And so it is still at its infancy. I would say from all the other hot topics like AI and decentralized clinical trials, this is something that has not been widely adopted because the upfront startup costs are huge, the
Oh.
knowledge gap is huge, and then the regulatory folks like the FDA and so on, they're still behind catching up, right?
Oh, yeah.
But you give it another 5 to 10 years, and that would be another area that would be a really hot topic.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I have not heard anything about that yet. So I'm like, oh my gosh, why why would we do that? So I did want to talk about decentralized trials as well. So can you start, just for any of our listeners who may not be familiar with trials, like what does it mean when a trial is decentralized?
Yeah, so to understand what a decentralized is, let's talk about the opposite, a traditional trial. What happens in a traditional trial, right? So you've got a clinical trial. Let's say that you want to enroll your family member into this traditional trial. You're going to go into this investigative site. They are going to get you to sign an informed consent form, right? They're going to screen you to see if you meet the inclusion exclusion criteria. And then if you do, come back again and you get randomized into the trial, and you go through the schedule of assessments and you essentially complete the trial. Now, what happened in COVID was that everything was pretty much blocked, right? Nobody could go into
Mm-hmm.
the sites. The site staff couldn't go in. Patients could go in. Everybody was quarantined. We had to continue these trials somehow, right? There was patient safety issues. So how do we do it? So at that time, the thoughts were going about, let's do some kind of a hybrid approach, whereby for certain visits we can probably have appropriate safeguards for the patient to come in, but otherwise, why do we need to have them come in every 3 months, every 6 months? Why don't we send a nurse over, as you said? So what a decentralized clinical trial is you have the whole extreme. In a completely decentralized, you don't have any need for a patient to come into the clinic. And there is a trial that Pfizer started off many years ago where everything was done through wearable technologies, right? So through
Oh,
wearables,
yeah.
what happens is you can essentially give the patient the devices, and you can essentially have data in real time come to your database, and then you don't even need the patient to come in except maybe for the beginning visit at the end of the visit. Most trials will follow the hybrid approach, which means that the patients will come in the beginning, but then during the subsequent visits in the trial, they don't need to come in. They can basically have wearable technology or have a nurse coming at home. Then you have the other extreme where you have only traditional, you cannot change. And those are, for example, you have an intensive care trial in an ICU, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you have a high touch trial, like a biologic that requires an infusion. Then obviously, there is no decentralized. So the benefit of decentralized, for the viewers, is the fact that now it's democratized research, which means that essentially we could have you participate in a trial remotely. You could be located in some rural area in Toronto, in Ontario, Canada, and you can still participate in an Ontario, Toronto site. You don't have to literally drive in, maybe for the first visit, but for subsequent visits, you are basically doing those visits remotely with your physician, with your investigator. So I think it's opened up diversity in clinical trials.
Mm-hmm.
More people, First Nations, other nation, ethnic populations who never had previous access can do it now. And it is now also allowing you to be able to get data faster in real time. Right?
Yeah.
Think about the CRA. They don't have to go in every single time now because they can see the data coming in real time. So the monitoring plans now have to be calibrated to essentially fit
Mm-hmm.
that decentralized model, right? So you
Yeah.
can even change and say, okay, I'm going to do 20% SDV versus 100% in the past. SDV meaning source document verification, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the major impact.
Yeah, I think that is amazing, because for if any of our listeners are not located in the U.S., they may not realize how big U.S. really truly is. You could drive for nearly a whole day and still be in Texas and not even leave that one state. So
Right.
the fact that individuals who can't access a doctor who's located in California because they're located in the Midwest and can now be part of this trial, like I have seen on trials where, yeah, patients had to fly to
Yeah.
see doctors, because depending on the type of trials, you have to have an investigator who can specialize in that, right? And so that could be limited to those huge hubs like the Californias, like the Texas, maybe Chicago, the big ones. I agree with you. I think that's amazing, and it's going to open up so much opportunity. There are probably so many people who want or need to participate, and they
Right.
haven't been able to because they can't afford to take the time off to
Correct.
fly and spend these nights, even if they're being reimbursed with
Right. So
something.
you're literally bringing the trial to their home, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
it's amazing. You mentioning the wearables, I've seen that. I was working with a client on a trial, and they had like some kind of like a device that they would wear, and then they
Mhm.
had an app that they constantly had to update. So their like food logs and other stuff were right there on the apps, and so it
Right.
would like send it in. Like that's
Wearables could be diabetes patches,
yeah,
it could be blood pressure cuffs that
yeah,
literally transmit data from measuring it at your home to the site.
yeah,
And providing them real-time data rather than you coming in and then the study coordinator taking a BP, right?
yeah. That's amazing. So I could see why it's such a hot topic, and I think it's a good thing. I really do, and I'm really curious what 10 years is going to look like.
Yeah, yeah. It's going to be interesting, I think, and it'll be a different playing field
Yeah.
compared to back when I started, 25 years ago.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Right. So, what advice, with everything changing? So there, I feel like there's a lot changing in the industry, but honestly, in this industry, there always is.
Right.
Advice would you give to like a young professional who wants to enter pharmaceutical or biotech industries today?
I would say the first thing that you need to be able to, convince yourself is you have to really genuinely care about people. If you're
Mm-hmm.
going in for the wrong reasons in this industry, and many people, are sort of driven by this instant gratification, you're not going to last, right? This is an industry where things take long, drugs fail most of the times. When they
Mm-hmm.
finally have an aha moment, it's one of those that you just cherish and run with. It's a very lucrative industry, and it's an industry that gives you the sort of corporate feel where you can work collaboratively with clients across the entire globe. So it's definitely an area you can take advantage of. But to prepare for it, first and foremost, get the appropriate credentials, right? So whether it is in a healthcare area, but also make sure that as the tide is changing and things are becoming more digitized and AI is coming in, get a background in data analytics, right? Get a background in artificial intelligence in addition to complement your healthcare background, right? That's the kind of requirement we have for the university where I teach is to
Mm.
make sure that you blend those business and sciences together so that you can really extract value out of your career, right? And
Yeah.
then at the end of the day, once you get into the industry, the world's your oyster, right? There's a lot of different opportunities, and I think the biggest satisfaction is having known that you are involved with a trial for which a drug is now out there and millions of patients are benefiting, right? And so
Mhm.
that's really, really special.
Yeah. That's the moment. I've been lucky to be part of some that have really had an impact. And like you were just talking about one that happened. So, do you have some others over the years? Have you had a few different, like, really great successes that you've been part of?
Yeah, so one of the things that I also enjoyed was back, at the time when I was at Procter and Gamble and Lilly, I used to work on diabetes trials, on
Oh, yeah.
Actos, on Zyprexa, and to be able to now, over the weekends, I still, do the occasional shift at the pharmacy to see those behind the counter,
What?
right? And say, I was involved in
Really?
the drug, right? And I was involved in the trial. It used to be called LY55645, and now it's called Actos, right? So it's kind of closing the whole loop, the bench to pharmacy shelf, and that's been
Yeah.
really, really motivating. But there have been so many success stories over the past 25 years that, I don't think we have enough time to
Yeah.
go
No,
through.
yeah. No,
But
but
yeah,
that's amazing though, because like you said, and especially for any listeners who aren't in the industry, they may not realize how truly, like you said, how many failures there
yes.
are. Um, that you're just,
Me too.
and
To
sometimes
think
it
about,
means, sorry, I was going to say, sometimes it means going back to the drawing board 100%. Other
yeah,
times it means they can like make some kind of modification and rather keep going or start a new trial with that modification, but
Right.
oh,
Yeah, and that's
there,
the adaptive clinical trial design, right? And
yeah,
so in the past, what used to happen was it takes right now the stats are about $2 billion to bring a drug to market,
yeah,
2 billion, right? And it takes about a minimum of 10 years, and you've got
mhm,
about a 17, 18 year patent life. The clock starts ticking right at the beginning when you're filing
yep,
your initial new drug application. So 10 years gone, you got 8 years to recoup your investments. There's no more
exactly,
blockbusters out there, so you're really talking about very niche areas, right? And so the stakes are high. The stakes are
yep,
really high, right? And so any type of efficiencies we can bring in, which will allow the trial to become, accelerate the trial and to be able to bring in those efficiencies, that will help the Brandon at the end of the road, right?
yeah,
And so that's the way I look at it: is take all of these changes and see if we can try and make the trials more efficient, so that we
hmm,
can get them to the market faster.
yeah, 100% agree. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about patients and recruitment and such, because you have a lot of experience having been a site and being project managers and such. Is patient recruitment something we still struggle with?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. In
Mhm,
fact, I would say if I were to itemize some of the top challenges the clinical
mhm,
research is following right now, it's still patient recruitment. AI is obviously something that might help with that, and we have companies that are popping up that are providing that service. But patient recruitment is difficult because, especially if you have a recruitment in the United States, it is such a highly competitive environment that if
mhm,
you're doing a clinical trial and if you're just a US centric trial, it's going to take you a long time to recruit. And so, one area that we are actually also focusing on now is let's go back to the patient. And so, we're going with these patient advocacy groups, right? So, if you're going to do a trial, for example, for Parkinson's disease or for dementia, right? We can go to these, or even rare diseases, we can go to the advocacy groups and see if we can get the patient's input and get them, where they are located, right? So these support groups basically have access to these patients.
right.
Other areas where we go is, as I said, we go through pharmacies, we go through patient referral networks. We've used AI, right? But patient recruitment still happens to be, unfortunately, the number one challenge. Is the number one reason why trials are delayed. And anytime a trial is delayed, shareholders are waiting, patients are waiting.
Hmm.
There's implications as well. Yeah,
Yeah, and so is that competitiveness? It probably has a couple different reasons, right? So if it's something, a market that is, there are a lot of doctors or a lot of trials.
right,
So if
right.
one doctor is running multiple trials, he may choose one over another, etc.
That's right.
But then the other side could be if it's like a rare disease,
Yes.
finding the patient population, right?
Finding the patient population, right? So basically, you then need to reach out to large repositories of data, genetic databases, and social media, etc., just to figure out where these pockets of patients are for these rare disease studies, right? But on the other flip side, you're right. If there is a center that's got 30 trials ongoing in the U.S., you've got that same patient. Now you have to literally, many of them try and recycle the patients. Bottom line is there is only a limited number of resources, right? And so these patients, unfortunately, are a finite commodity, right? And so the site has to choose which trial to assign them to. So the trial that doesn't get assigned to is the one that is waiting for the patient
Mhm.
randomizations and patient screenings. So there's different ways to try and help with patient recruitment. I think opening up new sites, using technology, using patient advocacy groups, et cetera, et cetera. But competition in the U.S. is fierce.
Yeah. Um, so something that you mentioned there, if you're comfortable answering this, I want to ask, and if you're not comfortable, that's totally fine. Um, because I have noticed just from a TMF perspective and seeing monitoring visits come in, et cetera, that it is common for some of these sites to have 10, 15 trials that they're running at one time. And as far as I'm aware, there's no regulatory requirement that says they can't do that. Although I have seen how it's part of qualification, right? They do look at that, and then the CRA helps determine, can they handle this? What are your thoughts on that? The fact that one doctor can have 15 different trials going on.
Yeah, and this is where the role of the CRA comes in, right? It's
Yeah.
really crucial that at the time of the feasibility, when you send out that questionnaire to the site, they could be a Sarah Cannon, they could be a Cleveland Clinic, they could be one
Yeah.
of those large institutions where they have 30 or 40 trials ongoing. But the CRA has to establish, does this investigator, first of all, does he have the therapeutic expertise? Check. Does this investigator have the patient population in their database? Okay. And they'll have to fill out the appropriate, information about that. Do they have the appropriate, support personnel like sub-investigators who can assist
Mm-hmm.
them? Do they have competing trials? Because if I am a biotech company A and I go to, Jane Doe, who's a PI, and I want to be able to pitch my trials, but Jane Doe is doing another trial for company B, what are they going to choose if they're both in the same therapeutic area? The role of the CRA is important, right? They will fill out the information, they will fill out the questionnaires, but who's going to validate them? And so that's why we train our CRAs to go out there with a discerning eye, ask those very important questions to the PI and to say, are you sure you can deliver the number of patients that you're expected to deliver, right? Without compromising your role in the other
Mm-hmm.
sponsors that you've obligated to, right? And
Right.
sometimes, unfortunately, they take on too much. And when do you find out? You do a TMF audit, right? Or you get an FDA coming to you, or you get a sponsor
Mm.
audit, and it's like, oops, right?
Yeah.
So, but
Well,
it
and
happens.
that's why also then, like, the sponsor oversight is so important, because they do rely on those CRAs to give them the feedback, and uh, and then during the trial actually having that sponsor oversight and making those decisions very quickly, like, this is not working or something. But I was just curious, because it sounds crazy to have that many, but I could see where if they have the support in place, it may
Yes.
not be as big of a deal,
Yeah.
versus if they can't truly handle it. So,
Yeah. So it comes down to, again, the type of sites, right? You've got
yes,
sites that are large institutions versus
yes,
small private sites. Large institutions tend to have a lot of trials. The small ones is where you got to be careful that they're not taking on too much.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, this has been an amazing conversation.
It's
It's
been fun.
so much
Yeah.
fun. I feel like I've learned so much. And before I let you go, I do want to find out if our listeners are interested in getting in touch with you, finding out more about you, where can they reach you?
Yeah, so they can contact us through our website, hygiagroupinc.com. They can contact me directly, mjagani@hygiagroupinc.com, and I think we'll provide those details at
Yes,
the end in the
yes.
podcast. But I'll be happy to answer any questions and potentially, contribute in any way I can.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you, and this was a fantastic conversation.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. It was fun. It was for
Thanks.
me as well.
This brings us to the end of today's episode. I want to extend my sincere thanks to our guest for sharing their inspiring journey. If you'd like to connect with them, you can find their contact information in the show notes. I also want to express my gratitude to you for joining us on this exploration of the clinical research industry. I hope you found today's episode insightful. If so, please consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. It truly helps us reach more listeners. If you have any feedback, questions, or comments about the show, feel free to email me at podcast@iceconsultingllc.com. Thank you once again, and I look forward to having you joining us on our next episode of Heart of the Trial.